Good morning, Year 8. I hope you are all well, and I hope that you got on okay with last week's task, which was to draw an ink and water skull. I've had some lovely responses, and you can see some of the work, the amazing work that you did last week in the PowerPoint attached to this lesson. If you didn't manage to get on with this, I know I've had a few replies saying about using different pens and things, or they're waiting for some pens. That is absolutely fine. We are testing and trialing new techniques. Okay, so today's lesson now, we're going to continue with the theme of skulls, but we're going a little bit further away from the Day of the Dead theme today. We're going to look at a famous artist called Leonardo da Vinci. And as you can see on the laptop just in front of me here, now I've got some different types of skull drawings that look realistic. Now these are called anatomical skulls. It means they look lifelike, they look real. This is the kind of drawing that would have been done when researching the brain, and if you look at certain biology and science books, these are the kind of drawings that represent the human body. So anatomical drawings there. So Leonardo da Vinci is a really famous artist that was known a long time ago for producing this kind of artistic work. So we're going to have a look at some of the methods and techniques that he used in this work today. So Pinterest is the website that I'm using to find these designs here. This is something that you could have a look at going forward when creating your art. It's just called Pinterest, Pinterest. So you can type in different things and lots of images come up. It's very useful for researching. So I've got some skulls in front of me. As you can see, the skulls that are on my computer screen, they are created using like dark earthy kind of tones. So you can see some browns, you can see a hint of yellow, and they all have one thing in common. And that thing in common is they almost have like a tea stain or coffee stain effect. So that is what I'm going to teach you today. We're going to have a look at drawing anatomical skulls, so skulls that look realistic. So we're taking all the Day of the Dead stuff away now. We're not looking at symbolism anymore. We're just looking at drawing realistic, high quality, actual skulls. And we're going to use coffee or tea or both. So coffee and tea staining to then finish and complete to decorate our skull. So hopefully that is clear. The first thing that you need to do is you need to put the date and title in your book like you would as normal. And then you need to answer the question that is in the PowerPoint for the starter activity today, for your Connect activity. The next thing that you're going to do when you've answered that in a full sentence is you are then going to move on to drawing a skull. You might see a pattern forming here. The last couple of lessons, it's all started with drawing a skull. This is to build and improve on your drawing skills, okay? But like I said, today, you are going to draw a skull, something like this, using the methods you've used over the last few lessons. So not pressing too hard on your pencil. We want just a rough outline, no shading. And you're not going to draw any symbols like you've done previously. So just a skull drawing that is symmetrical, which means both sides are the same. So you can see the eye here and the eye here are exactly the same size and shape, and the same with the rest of the skull. And I've drawn a line down the middle just to check at the end that things line up. So what you're going to do today is you're going to draw your skull. It can be smaller than mine. You can do it half the size of that, like we did last lesson. So you can do it just half the size if you need to. If you want to do it A4, then that's fine. But it might take you a little bit longer. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a look at how to make our own coffee and tea inks using just hot water, coffee and tea, and then we're going to look at applying them with a few different materials as well. So first things first, what do you need? Well, you need your skull drawing ready, so you should sketch that out lightly in pencil. Then you're going to need 2 mugs if you're going to use coffee and tea, or 1 mug with some hot water. Now, I say hot water, it doesn't need to be boiling out the kettle. Just some warm water will be fine for this, just to absorb our inks. Mine's been sat there for about 10 minutes now, so it doesn't need to be hot. Please be careful with this. I don't want anyone hurting themselves with hot water, okay? So then you're going to need some coffee and some tea. I've just used a normal brand of coffee, and again, just normal PG Tips tea bags or whatever you've got. So I've laid them out, I've set up a nice workspace, and I'm ready to go with that. Now the next thing that you're going to need is some materials to work with. So last week we had a few people saying, oh, I don't have a paintbrush, I don't have anything to work with. So if you haven't got a paintbrush or a makeup brush, something you could try is dabbing with just a bit of kitchen cloth, okay, and use it as a sponge. You could use some old net to dab. That might create a nice pattern. That's just from my Easter chocolate. You could use a bit of cardboard that you've cut out and you could drag the ink. You could use some lollipop sticks, again, to drag the ink or use the end to draw with. You could use the end of some kind of brush if you don't want to damage it and just draw with the end like that. Again, you can use kitchen towel ripped up and dab with that. Anything like this you can use, okay? I want you to just give it a go and work with what you have got today. So hopefully that is clear, and now you've got all your materials. Now the next step is going to be mixing. In order to mix my coffee and tea staining, all I need to do is just add a little bit of coffee, just a spoon's fine, into my water and give it a good mix. Then I'm just going to pop my tea bag. Just one should be fine for now, into my other mug. So I'm just going to let them dissolve in just for a little bit of time. So the trick with tea and coffee staining is the longer you leave them, the darker the shades are going to go. So you could actually have an extra mug if you wanted to get it even lighter. Or you might just need to add more coffee or another tea bag if you want to make it darker in a quicker amount of time. I'm just going to leave it like that for now. So I've put my coffee in my water and I've put my tea in my water. It is a trial and error process. There's not really a right or wrong with this. It is all about experimenting. If you do it like this and you've added 1 spoon of coffee and 1 tea bag and you think, oh, it's not dark enough, either leave it a bit longer to soak, to absorb, or add some more. So the next step now is we need to decide how we're going to start applying our inks to our design. So it is really useful, like on my computer, if you have in front of you an image to work from or several images to work from. So I'm just going to select one of these images I found using the website Pinterest, one that I think is quite useful to help me learn how to draw shades. Oops. One that, clearly shows the coffee technique. So I've just selected this one because I think there's some really nice dark shading and there's also some light tones in there as well. This one is actually by Leonardo da Vinci. So it is quite nice actually if you have a little bit of a look further about his work. And yeah, maybe you can tell me something about him as well. It would be fantastic if you wrote something down underneath about Leonardo da Vinci. So now the process is what I'm going to start. So in order to carry out this process, I'm going to use a paintbrush to get started. I'm going to make sure my area is clear. I've sketched out my drawing and I am now ready with my inks to go. So I'm just going to do a light wash. First of all, I'm using my tea. You don't have to use both. Like I said, you can just use one. I think coffee is actually stronger than tea, but I'm going to use my tea to do a really, really light wash on the background. Now, actually, a lot of you tea stained your research pages for homework, so you should be able to do this quite well. And it might be that you need to really take some time on this drawing and build up the layers. It does dry quick, but obviously if you add too much ink onto the page, it's going to rip the page, yeah? So you can see mine's quite wet now. I don't want to add any more to that top bit because it might rip. So then I'm just going to work further down. I'm just adding a base layer, so I'm just going over my drawing now. It doesn't need to be neat to add a base layer. I always like to add a base layer because I think it's easier to work with afterwards. So I'm just spreading my ink out, dragging it out, but I'm not being really vigorous because I don't want my paper to rip. So I've pretty much now covered my drawing. Obviously it's hard to see there because it's wet. if you look closer, you can see that I've added a light layer. What I'm going to do now is I've actually had some inks that I've put in little pots that I've made. And I did these last week because I want to be able to show you them really, really set because they come out darker. So this is something that you can have a look at. It might be that you want to save your materials after in a little jam jar or a pot as well to do this. So now I'm just leaving it to dry just for a moment. And I'm going to start to think about the shading that I actually need to complete on this. So now we've looked at skulls for a few weeks. What you should be able to see is that they always tend to have really, really dark areas in the eye sockets. So dark areas in the eye sockets. And they also have, sorry, my image has disappeared. So they have really dark areas in the eye sockets, like so. If we just look closely in here. And then they have dark areas around the teeth, within the nose, and then the shading underneath the eyes. The forehead tends to be quite light with just shading to the sides, because that is what your actual skull would look like in real life. So this is where the darker areas are. So I want you to use an image or use a couple of images and not necessarily copy, but take on board where these darker and lighter areas are that you are going to recreate in layers using your inks today. So I'm now going to start adding my darker layers, and I think I'm going to add using a bit of just kitchen towel. So I'm just going to add some dark into my eye sockets. You might need to dab it off if you've got too much, like I've done. And it will spread quite quickly. As you can see, mine spread quite quickly. I don't want to remove all of it off the page. I just want to dab carefully. So I just want to dab it carefully. So as you can see now, my eye sockets, as wet and damp as they are, they're starting to look a little bit darker now. And you are just continuing to build up this technique. As you can see in my drawing, underneath, I've added darker lines. I know it's difficult to see. I've added darker lines there. So I'm just going to let that dry for a minute. And then I'm going to use the same technique. And I'm going to work into my nose. Just again, using my tea towel. And then I'm going to work into my mouth. So you can see now that I'm really starting to get in the darker and lighter tones of my skull. So I'm going to continue with this now for you to show you how it works. And then you can get on with this. So just a recap of my expectations of the task today, Year 8. So this is week 4 now of home learning. Today you are going to complete, in your book, you're going to put the date and the title, and then you're going to answer the connect question, which is on the PowerPoint in a full sentence. And then you are going to draw an anatomical skull, so a real life looking skull, like that of the work of Leonardo da Vinci. You can use Pinterest or Google to find some images, or just use the ones that I've put in the PowerPoint. You are then going to get some coffee and tea, or coffee or tea. Coffee works in a lot darker way. Some mugs with water in, and then you're going to add some coffee and tea to them. You're then going to find some paintbrushes or some cloths to dab and to apply your ink. And then you're going to apply the ink to your drawing, using the image that you have found to create light and dark tones and to add detail. Like I said, you might need to be patient, you might need to wait, you might need to come back to it so it can dry to add darker layers, you might need to even add more coffee to it. This is a trial and error process. We are now developing our independent skills, showing our growth mindset to draw a fantastic skull, a fantastic real life looking skull. You can then at the end of your drawing just add a what went well and an even better if. Don't forget, the best drawings do get shared with other teachers and also on our Twitter page, which is Art Hurlingham. So please give us a follow. It's really helpful for you as well if you fall behind or you feel a bit stuck on a task or you need to catch up because you were sick, to have a look at that as well. So I hope that is clear on what you need to do today. Have a great rest of the week and good luck with this task. Thanks, Year 8. Bye. Hey everyone, I just wanted to share another point with you, something I figured out since making the previous video. When your skull is dry like this, so this is me building up a few layers and using a hairdryer in between, I decided that I would like it to be even darker to add more detail, because at the moment you can't define the eye sockets from the rest of the skull that clearly. You can see some details, but I would like to make it even darker just to make more details. And somebody recommended that I try to use some soy sauce. So this might be something that you've got in your kitchen, or another type of sauce or vinegar. So this is just standard soy sauce. So what I'm going to do is just have a go at that now, and we can see what happens. So I'm just going to use a little bit, don't need too much. And then I'm just going to have a go at working my brush into that. Now soy sauce is quite dark, so hopefully this will work really well. So I'm just going to build up my eye sockets with the soy sauce, and immediately I can see it is much darker, in fact, than the coffee. So if you've got some soy sauce at home, have a go at using that to build up the darker areas of your skull. And again, in between using your tea and coffee, you can use a hairdryer to dry it. This might be something that you can come back to and work on at intervals before you submit it to me. So I hope that this is a successful task for you. If you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. Just give me a message via Show My Homework. But good luck with using the coffee and tea method. And obviously you can add soy sauce to the list if you've got some, because that works really, really well to get your skull design, your that works really well to get your anatomical, your realistic skull design looking really, really realistic and like the work of Leonardo da Vinci. So have a great week all. Thanks very much. Bye.